Afternoon. Hello. Hope you're all doing well. I wanted to go over some important details for Essay 2 during this video. Also, I want to acknowledge that, our schedule is kind of interesting in the fact that we're straddling two different units this week. We're working on readings for Unit 3, dealing with technology and the impact it has on communication. Let me just close that. But we're also working on Essay 2, which is due this Friday. And that essay is dealing with readings from Unit 2, which jump into many of the problems facing our educational system, focusing primarily on the K through 12 system and how authors feel about these problems. Some of them offer potential solutions, and some of them have some pretty provocative arguments, especially John Gatto when he proposes that school is not necessary for a meaningful education, right? It says there in his title, against school. So he really is against school. Not education, mind you. He's all for education, but he doesn't believe that compulsory, meaning required K through 12 schooling, is necessary for a good education. So I want you to spend some time looking at the prompt for Essay 2, obviously. We know the drill. I got the discussion here, kind of an overview of what we've been doing. There's three options here again. I'd like to give you some choice when you work to choose your prompt. Makes it a little more interesting for both you and for me. So this is in terms of organization, you can still refer to the kind of main structural things that I've posted in Canvas about essay structure. We're not reinventing the wheel necessarily, although there are a few evolutions, I would say, in this essay, and that's going to be primarily the focus of what I want to go over today. But you'll notice that in each of the prompts, you're dealing with at least two texts. So this essay is all about seeing how ideas or claims or points from one author are affected by the claims, ideas, and points from another author. So we call this kind of a lens essay, and meaning that you use one of the authors as a lens or a way to examine ideas of another author. So that's the number one big difference for this essay. And I'm going to go over, again, some specific strategies on how to best approach this. The other thing you want to look at is the requirements. You'll notice that it's one page longer this time. And the 5 full pages minimum does not include the works cited page. So it has to be 5 full pages of analysis and body paragraphs. And then the additional page would be your works cited page. Okay, so you got to write 5 full pages. The other thing you notice is there's a bullet here. It says develop a clear analysis of how the two authors' claims interact, and that goes back to what I'm saying about the prompt this time, or the prompts this time. They each ask you to deal with two authors, two texts from our reader. Okay, so once we start to get there, what do we do? Okay. So I'll post this slideshow under Unit 2, but this kind of walks us through my process for thinking about how to do this, okay? So number one, you got to determine which prompt you want to respond to. Obviously, that's the first step, right? But for me, I know I want to analyze Annion's idea through the lens of Kozol's claims regarding the problems facing many inner-city schools. So I want to start with claims. I think that's always a good place to start in an analytical essay. And a claim is just a fancy word for something the author wants us to believe. So an author will make a point, develop it, and support it with evidence. And that's really what a claim is, okay? So nothing fancy. So I've identified an idea from Annion here. And it's just, you can see it's very simple. It's work is following the steps of a procedure. She's talking about working class schools that she observed. The procedure is usually mechanical, involving rote behavior and very little decision making or choice. So as she observed these schools, she realized that the students weren't being asked to do the same kind of high level thinking or collaborative work as they were in maybe upper middle class schools or upper class schools. So then I started to think about, why is this important? Why is this relevant? Why is it compelling to me? Why do I feel myself focusing on this? Okay. But I don't want to just respond with my own opinions. This is moving away from just I agree or disagree, right? This is basing it and rooting it all in analysis. So I look for a claim from my B text, which I'm using Kozol's piece, which we should have read already, to develop some ideas about what connections I want to make. So then again, I settle on a claim or an idea that Kozol is presenting in his piece. All right. So it's about corporate leaders. They sometimes pay lip service to the notion of good critical and analytical skills, but really, what they really want is just students who are trained to be good workers, who don't ask a lot of questions, right? So you can start to see there's some overlap here between Kozol and Anion, right? The working class schools, they're just taught to repeat behaviors, to do something that's rote, which means just repetitive and not much imagination or critical thinking involved. So I'm starting to bubble around and see how some of these ideas are connected, right? Even though Kozol's not mentioning Anion, Anion's not mentioning Kozol. As a reader, as an analytical thinker, I start to develop what I see as a bunch of connections, okay? And what I would recommend is, if you're having trouble, maybe chart out these connections and just start with an idea or a claim, and then put another claim next to it. So if you were working with what I'm showing you, you'd put Anion's name and then write out a claim of hers. And then next to it, write out Kozol and then write out a claim of his, and just start to look at them side by side and see what you notice, see what comes to mind. And then I start to ask questions. Questions are always a good way to get the writing process started. And especially if you're feeling stuck, just start to ask questions. So my questions are not super complex or complicated. I just think about, how do these claims connect? How does the claim from text B affect our analysis and understanding of the claim from text A? How do these texts work in dialogue with one another? What words or language can I use to help make these connections? Okay. So here are some terms to think about. And these are thinking about, how do the claims from each text interact with each other? One way is they might support one another, right? So if you see two claims that seem really similar, like they're saying something that's not exactly the same, but very much of the same, in the same ballpark, then you want to think about they support, right? It sharpens it, clarifies it, focuses, helps explain or illuminate the idea. Then next, you think about extending. So if a claim extends another claim, that means it kind of takes it further and goes beyond what the first author said, and it takes it in new and interesting directions. And thirdly, complicate. So if a claim from one author complicates another, it doesn't necessarily mean it disproves that author's idea, but more that it shows a wrinkle or maybe a gap in logic, or maybe something that the first author overlooked, right? So it can expose problems, contradictions, or present counterexamples and counterarguments that challenge some part of the argument. So these are words you might want to familiarize yourself with and really get comfortable using. So if I was saying like Kozol, supports Anion's claim, and I'm going to show you how that might work. Okay. So again, I go back to the claims that I identified as important, and then I started to think: does Kozol's claim support, extend, or complicate Anion's claim? And I think you could make an argument that it both supports and extends. I wouldn't say it really complicates, because it really, adds and builds on what Anion is doing, right? But it takes it in a new and interesting direction. Okay. Anion's not mentioning anything about corporate leaders, but if you read into the subtext of it, corporate leaders don't really want critical thinking, right? They want They want people who support their priorities. So I would say that the Kozol supports and extends Anyan's claim. Okay. Here's another one. Work is often evaluated not according to whether it is right or wrong, but according to whether the children follow the right steps. And Kozol says at Fremont High, this technical arts requirement was far more often met by courses that were basically vocational and also obviously keyed to low paying levels of employment. Okay, so again, I think you could argue that it supports and extends Anyan, right? It's in the same kind of realm of critical thinking and analysis, but Kozol takes it in a new and interesting and even more detailed direction, right? A lot of Anyan's observations are based on unidentified schools, but they fit into certain classifications or schema that she's set up. So then I have a lot of ideas bubbling up. As you work on this essay, I would suggest spending a lot of time working on making these connections before you start drafting the body of your essay. Okay, you don't want to spend too much, you don't want to jump into paragraphs before you have some really good raw material. So then I started to think about putting it all together in a body paragraph. So I've tried to color code this. Yellow is kind of my topic sentence. Green is my evidence, and then the E is my explanation. So it's point, information, explanation. It kind of follows the pie structure, all right? So you can read through this on your own, but basically I'm setting up what's going on, then I give a sense of the claim, then I explain it. This is the so what, and this is something I commented on in quite a few papers, but it's really important in your body paragraphs to give the reader the so what. Why is this important? Why do I need to know this? Now, this is my first body paragraph, okay? Then I go into my second body paragraph, and here's where new things are happening. You notice I'm transitioning. You see the word additionally. That's an important transitional word. And that gives the reader the signal that I'm building on what came before. I'm building on the previous body paragraph. Then you notice in this section in the light blue, I'm bringing in Kozol. And if I assume here that I've already set up Anyan in my introductory paragraph, then you can see that I just refer to her by her last name, because in my introduction, I've already given context and background about who she is, what her article is called. So now I can just kind of refer to her as Anyan, all right? But now I want to bring in my second text, or what I call my B text, to help analyze the ideas of Anyan. So you see this is a packed sentence. It's full of really important information. I have the title of his article, the book it comes from, when it was published, his name, his kind of credibility statement, and his main argument, okay? So study this. This is what you want to be doing when you bring in your B text. And again, this is all in the framework of setting up multiple body paragraphs. Then I settle on the specific claim that I've identified. Then here in the yellow, I get into my analysis. I say Kozol both supports and extends Anyan's claim, okay? But I don't stop there. I explain how. He supports it by developing similar connections between the education students receive and the work it prepares them for. Then I go into Kozol extends Anyan's claim by directly questioning the motives, etc. And then finally, in this kind of blue, darker blue, I think about why it all matters. Okay, why is this important? Why is making this connection important? Why should we care? What is it? What takeaway does it give us? Okay, so this is kind of just an example of two body paragraphs. You notice that the first one is shorter because I'm just focusing on Anyan. But then as I bring in my B text, Kozol, I have a lot more work to do. I have to transition and say, hey, she's not the only one thinking about this stuff, right? Here's this guy, Jonathan Kozol. I give all the big important information about who he is and what he's doing. Then I get more specific, right? In the green here, I'm really focusing on that specific claim that I identified. Then here in the yellow, I'm unpacking it. I'm making those connections. Not only am I making the connections, but I'm demonstrating how those connections are made in my analytical thinking, right? This is not according to anyone else but you. You are the one making these connections and developing them. And then finally,